How's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to part 2 of the KTM Rebuild series. Today's goal is basically to get everything on that's not going to limit me from putting the engine back in when it's done being built. Here's another reason of why I'm going through this whole bike. The pin holding the foot peg on was an old nail. So many little things like that on that bike that I just want to go through everything and get everything all correct and how it should be. The bar stopper ended up snapping when I was taking that bolt off, so I'm gonna have to extract that. All right, the frame is down. There's nothing left on the frame. I took all the hardware out. It's ready to go. So now we'll go ahead and prep the swing arm and the subframe, and then we'll get everything out and wash it. All right, just got done stripping everything down. Now I'm gonna take it outside and power wash everything and get it all cleaned up. Alrighty, everything is sandblasted. It worked pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the results. It wasn't quite as strong as I was hoping it was going to be, so it didn't take off some of the paint on the frame, but I think it's roughed everything up enough to where paint will stick good, and it removed all the surface rust. That was kind of the goal. I don't want to film the painting process because I don't want to risk getting overspray in the camera, so I'm going to go put the camera inside and I will catch up with you guys in the garage. Just got done with the painting. It's drying now. I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of the plastics that go on the back side of the bike. That way I can get all that installed while I'm working on reassembling the engine. So we're going to go out here and just power wash, degrease, and clean some of these plastics. Alright, I just brought everything in from being painted. I'm really happy with how it turned out. For a backyard paint job, it actually looks really good. There you go, you guys can see. Alright, so I guess the first thing I'm going to do is get the bearings in here. I already pulled them out. I'm going to re-grease everything, clean everything, put it back in. I'll get the triple put together, and then we'll try to get in the rear shock, the swing arm. The suspension was already built about a month ago, so there's no reason to rip it all apart and rebuild it. We're gonna go ahead and get the forks in here and get all this torqued down to spec. When you're torquing forks, you always have to do it in a correct sequence to make sure your alignment's straight, and then you have to go through and re-torque them as you're doing it. It's kind of a weird process. Then we'll go ahead and get the subframe mounted, hopefully get like the airbox mounted, maybe the rear fender, maybe the front fender, basically everything I can get mounted, hopefully all the wiring harness, maybe the coil, anything I can get on there without blocking my ability to put the engine in. You guys can see over here we have a case splitter and a flywheel puller from Tusk, so that'll help with getting the engine pulled apart. I'll hopefully do that tonight. That's part 3 is most likely going to be ripping apart the bottom end and then doing the carb rebuild. And we'll get stuff like this back on. I'll get this cleaned up and put that back on. We'll get the bars on, bar risers. We'll get all the brakes on. I rebuilt all the brakes about a few months ago, so there's no reason to do it again. Next thing I'm going to do is probably get the forks in and get the triple torqued. Okay, so the top bolts are gonna be 20 Newton meters and the bottom bolts are gonna be 15 Newton meters. Everything is loose up here. All this is just hand tight. And I'm gonna start doing both of these. And I'll show you what I mean by having to do it multiple times. So we're gonna do the top one first on both sides. And then now you go back and do it again. There we go. And then the bottom is going to be the same thing at 15. Alrighty, this is going to go ahead and be 60 Newton meters. There it is. Sweet. And then we're going to go ahead and do this one right here is going to be 15 Newton meters. Alrighty, so now that that is all torqued and done, I'm going to go ahead and put the risers that I have for it, and then we'll go ahead and put the bars on, and then I'll start running the wiring harness and all the brakes and all that type of stuff. Alright, the risers and the bars are on. Looks sweet. These are bars from a KTM 690 and then the Rocks risers. It's gonna feel great. Looks sweet too. Alright, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and start doing the wiring harness now. And I'm not replacing the plastics because we're gonna get a decal kit for it, and this is gonna be a bike that we're gonna ride the crap out of and wreck and stuff like that, so I'm not really too worried about replacing the scuffed up plastics, and they're going to be covered by a decal anyways. There's nothing structurally wrong with any of them, they're just scuffed up, so as long as they're smooth enough for a decal to stick to, it'll work. Just got the front brake and speedo all put on. It's always a good idea to Loctite anything in the braking system, so that's all torqued and Loctite. I was just about to put the throttle cables on and I found that that wire is fraying and starting to break. So that's something I'm gonna have to add to the list to replace. But anytime you guys have, oh, that one's starting to fray too. Anytime you guys have your throttle cables off the bike, it's always a good idea to get some cable lube and spray it down in here and then just move it up and down a few times. Helps loosen everything up in here and prevent rust and things like that, and makes your throttle feel a lot better.
Perfect.
Alright, I think this is where we're going to call it for today. It's midnight. I really can't do too much more without having the motor in there. I did mount the swing arm just to kind of see how it looks, but I'm going to have to pull that pin out once I put the motor in, because the pin that holds the swing arm in is also a motor mount. But it's looking pretty good. Starting to look like a dirt bike. Got the bars all mounted up nice. Most of the wiring harness is ran. It's all just loose still because I want to get the engine in before I start zip tying and cleaning everything up. Finally have everything I need to pull this engine apart, so that's going to be episode 3. I will probably start that tomorrow, getting this thing ripped apart, and then we'll wait on parts to slap it back together. But everything's coming together. It's starting to look like a bike. But thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in part 3.